All right, let's work on our game. Let's see. Actually, I kind of want to. Let's see. All right. So, if we want to, let's see. We have our planning, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is our 4 weeks of development here. And I think this is July 14th. I think this is August 14th. So that's there. And then the areas where development is going to work out into. What are we doing on the front end? What are we doing on the back end? What is our infrastructure look like? Which is similar to back end, but when I'm talking about back end, I'm talking about the actual game logic and things like that versus the hosting and security and performance and things like that. So this is going to be for our game. Let's see, Pyroclasm, and that is our incremental. It's an incremental idle, maybe a little RPG here, and it's for a game jam. The previous stream we went over the details of the game jam. One of the rules was that the game had to incorporate at least one of these particular mechanics: crafting, resource gathering, quests, player combat, housing, guest login, and audio. And so what I would definitely like to hit is, let's see, crafting is by far the most popular mechanic, so we'll definitely want to fit crafting into the game. Resource gathering is a given. I guess the alternative here is that if you were to get all your drops and materials from combat and then do crafting, very much like Elithor. Elithor does have ore, but a good deal of crafting has nothing to do with the ore. It has, it's mainly focused around combat, those drops, and then crafting. So you could do crafting without resource gathering, but resource gathering was the second most popular feature and almost number one. Quests, we'll see what we want to do about quests. Quests are tricky because they take quite a lot of time and they're very easy for players to get through. So it's hard to get the ROI on the kind of the playability, the playability, the time investment for players, for how long it takes to build a questing system. It works in games that have a good narrative and where you actually want to kind of point the player in a direction, guide them a little bit. Those quests can help do that. Most of the time in incrementals, you'll see things like achievements do that. So the quests we will probably table a little bit. We'll put maybe later in the development if we get to it. Player combat, I do think I'm not going to interpret this as PvP. I think I have to revisit the survey to really understand that, or I'll just ask in that particular Reddit what they, or Discord, what they meant by that. But it feels just like combat in general, which is fine. We definitely want some sort of combat. I think just gathering and upgrade your gathering tool and doing more gathering is a pretty simple game loop that's pretty easy to burn out on. Housing, not going to do housing, but I would like some sort of cosmetic achievement sort of thing, probably outside of the scope of what we can accomplish in 4 1-week sprints, but it is sort of that keep that in the back of the mind, just like questing. The guest login is definitely going to be something we use. That's a G. Guest login. Basically, can you play the game without a username and password? So I think that'll be great. And then audio, yeah, I'd love especially some sort of music, as opposed to sound effects. I'm not. We'll see. Incrementals and idles are sort of played in the browser and a sort of, it's something you do while you work or while you do something else. You set your actions and maybe then you close the browser and you come back a little while later. So I don't think anyone's on board with having a whole bunch of sound effects. But I can imagine little background ambiance, kind of mood music for the different sort of areas. As we were in the previous stream when we were looking at the map and how the world might have these different regions, I can imagine as you click into those different regions, you're getting a different mood or vibe, and we can convey that with imagery, colors, themes, but I think music is a great way to kind of change the tone. Hey, we're in a more dangerous area, a more combat heavy area, as opposed to maybe the more peaceful, tranquil valley area. So those would be some nice things to try out. So, okay, looking here at what I want to do. Let's see. This is our game plan for between now and mid-August. What I imagine us doing, the main game loop, every 6 seconds, there's a tick. This works out pretty nicely to 10 ticks or 10 turns a minute, which is 100 turns an hour. That math is pretty good. So we're gonna have a tick or turn happen once every 6 seconds, and then what's going to happen in our initial game loop for gathering. So let's see. We're going to collect a resource. This could be going with the initial theme that we are excavating a city like Pompeii buried by volcanic material. It made a lot of sense that we stay with the digging and quarrying route. I don't think we'll necessarily at this point open it up into resources like you see in some other games where you have stone, wood, metal, meat, etc. I think for right now we'll just stick with stone. Maybe there can be a couple different types of stone, but this is our common material. We collect stone, and then we'll also want to collect the different types of drops and how they're used for crafting. So there will be some initial fortification. So I may bring up the world map, but if we have a world map and you're essentially digging at certain locations on this world map, and then you'll want to fortify your dig site. You'll want to reinvest a certain amount of stone either into your city, your more persistent city back home, or you may want to fortify your particular dig site. And maybe fortifying your dig site, if there is combat, would help in some sort of defensive manner. It could also be that when you use the material to reinforce the dig site, you're able to dig down farther, and possibly when the next pyroclastic explosion happens, maybe you don't have to re-excavate quite as much. So spend stone. I'm gonna call it the keep for right now, like your personal kind of fortress that's more persistent from overall kind of round by round. And by round I mean like when the volcano explodes and covers the land again in volcanic ash and kind of resets the progress. So we're gonna upgrade the keep. And I guess you could upgrade a particular site. And I think to a certain extent it would make sense to upgrade like an outpost. So this we will spend some more time thinking about later. But if we do have combat, if we remember the world map from the previous stream, sort of like a coastline, some big open plains, and then you start getting into these mountains. And I think a lot of the excavation will happen in that big open plains, and a lot of the combat will happen closer into the mountains, where you start having conflicts with other creatures that live in the hills, in the mountains, in the caves, in the tunnels, whether these be goblins, orcs, trolls, elementals, eventually even some sort of dragon, right? So it makes sense that you are gathering, and then this is like your persistent. So you sort of have three different places to put stone into. The thing to keep in mind is that outpost upgrades would reset each season. Site upgrades would probably reset to a certain extent each season, but the upgrades you make to your keep or your town would persist. So those will probably be more expensive because they don't go away, whereas the ones for combat and gathering would be cheap, because each round I want to make it easy for folks to try new things and not worry, oh, I'm spending too many resources reinforcing this one location. Maybe you and some other adventurers want to build an outpost in a completely new area, as opposed to the one you made the previous round. So I want those upgrades to be cheap, because they are gonna be a loss, and I don't want the player to feel that they've been set back too much. It's the equivalent of like when you're adventuring around and you have a backpack or a belt full of health potions. You are anticipating using these health potions. It is not your expectation to return from your adventure and have never touched any of the supplies that you went in with. So it's almost like you collect these resources to build up some sort of you could almost call it like a campaign, like a military campaign, right? If you see these military campaigns on like a map, you'll see like the starting point, right? and a big arrow, right? And like a conflict, and then another arrow, and another conflict, right? And that sort of, right? This is essentially, yeah, your little outpost. And as you proceed during the round, you get to these different locations, and maybe you reinforce them so it's easier for you to proceed. But this whole thing will eventually be wiped out by the lava, right? Because it's just too difficult for you to go from your starting location all the way to where, say, for example, these elementals are, or the dragon is, right? So you need to kind of do these little checkpoints along the way and then reinforce them. So I kind of like this idea of kind of imagining a campaign. You're investing a certain amount of your resources into your campaign coffers, and that's what's going to pay for your expedition. Now, as we spoke about in the previous stream, some of these resources will some of these resources will be spent on improving your ability to gather the resources, so that as you play day by day, you're gathering more. The amount you gathered today was more than you gathered yesterday. Tomorrow would be more than today, and just improving that resource gathering loop, as opposed to what we're discussing here with like the combat and the campaign. That is taking a chunk of your resources and essentially, I don't want to use the word gamble, but you are spending it, and whatever return you get from that won't influence, I don't think it'll influence your gathering loop. I think I want the payout of combat to influence the combat loop, right? So the more gathering, the gathering is required to invest in the gathering loop. Combat is required to invest in the combat loop, and this should hopefully keep it so that there's no way to gather a ton of stuff, accumulate a mass of gold, and then simply invest in becoming someone that does great at combat. It's going to be something you have to incrementally do round by round, day by day. You need to siphon off a certain percentage of your gathered resources into combat and keep that combat wheel spinning. It's optional. You could just go for the gathering loop here that we have. But for the players that want to do the combat, it's the combat is fueled by the gathering profits. And then once that goes, you start getting combat drops and things like that can improve your combat. But it's like thinking of if this was like a car, right? The gathering profits are essentially your gas. The combat drops are going to all the details about your car. How many seats it has? Does it have tinted windows? What does the horn, the exhaust, the paint job, the spoilers, all those other things. But at the end of the day, the car still needs gas, and that's what the gathering loop provides. So great. Okay. So now we're going to, if I go back, I want to put combat off for probably another day or so. I want to try to understand better what we're doing. What sort of drops do we get? What sort of knowledge? Sort of relics. What I really like about Idle Quest is there's a way, by just playing the game, because you can't rely, so we need to make a game that does not rely on the marketplace. So you can't rely on like, for example, we're only saying that stone essentially is our currency, right? maybe there's a vendor you could sell stone to, so you could start generating gold. But you need to make sure you don't define the system that it is, well, I'll just go to the market to sell stone to other players, and that's how I'll generate gold. Because where are those characters getting their gold from? And the point I'm trying to get to is there needs to be a way for you to invest back into your gatherer from the drops and the resources from his actions. The case in point here, in Idle Quest, you occasionally get tool components just from doing the regular gathering action. I personally have a hard time with this sort of logic that somehow in the dirt is going to be a component that's going to improve your shovel, but that's how these games work. If you do this enough, your tool goes from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. You don't need any other player. And the way it works, IQ tools. So you get the tool components, which we'll just abbreviate as TC. You get them from actually doing gathering. And as you play, you get dungeon keys. Dungeons are a great source of that. What else? You have special events, which again are just the gathering action, but much better for getting those particular drops. I'm trying to think of what other things you could do, and all of that is for the TCs. You get enough of that and you spend it back, and you do that. Now, if you just get stone, right? Okay, stone. What can stone buy you in Idle Quest? Well, without being reliant on any other player, you can't do the land upgrades, but you can do the gathering tab upgrades. These are upgrades that are paid with either a combination of metal, wood, or stone, or you can pay with a combo of all three, or one of the types of resources. So in this case, if all we were doing was gathering stone, you would just be paying a lot of this, but you'd be getting your gathering upgrade. And the same thing, what else can you pay? For the abyssal portal, it's the same thing. So, and then over time, and the whole reason to get gathering upgrades is because there's another currency. There's the gathering shards. And the only way to get gathering shards is by doing the gathering action. And all that does is feed back into better drops, better resources. Here, let me just separate this stuff out a little bit. Okay. And then, so our game would want, right? And then they have a few other things, right? Oops. As you do your activity, you drop trinkets, and all trinkets do is increase the amount of, stone, XP. Just thinking, the game really pushes. You see, Idle Quest can rely very much on there being enough players to diversify that you could trade stone for wood, or enough combat folks that you could sell a stone for gold and then buy what you need. Our game can't rely on there being enough players for the marketplace to make sense. So whatever system we put in for players to progress, our gathering loop needs to feel like it needs to work as a single player game. We will just hedge our bets on combat being the multiplayer aspect, and we'll design it there so that combat requires about 2 to 3 players. 2 to 3 to 4 players in a party. It could work single player, but I think it'll really shine if we get multiple people. But the gathering loop, your initial character progression, and your idle accumulation of wealth needs to make sense without the participation of other people. Because at this point, we can't rely on there being more than a few players for this game jam. So let's go ahead and look at that. Okay, so the base action is going to give us trying to think of what happens. Which round do we have? We'll just call him our gatherer. And we're going to get stone. I think we'll just borrow the idea, perhaps, of a tool component. Something that can be... so you're going to get stone, probably some experience, right? So we have our gathering skill, right? So that's going to increase. What kind of drops do we need? We need a crafting. Oops. I don't want... There we go. Whoops. That... No. Sorry. There we go. We want... Okay, now for crafting. So what can we craft? What can we craft? I want... Combat seems like the main thing to craft. At the same time, if we're digging in certain ruins, okay. What do you mean by ruins? With artifacts or something? Okay. So we could craft specific types of shovels for different types, because there's different types of lava, different types of soil and sediment and pumice and whatever that you're going to deal with. So we can get... So does maybe the gatherer... Oops, sorry. Maybe the gatherer has a tool. I like the idea of ruins. Ruins, kind of like a charm or trinket. You mean like ruins like Idle Quest, where we end up like taking a raw material and turning it into something like that, in the way Idle Quest will drop like sandstone, right? A craftable material, as opposed to stone, which is a currency. The shovels could be made from the different stone, kind of like Minecraft. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think the thing to keep in mind here is that stone is a currency. We're going to treat it kind of like our in-game gold. Maybe at some point there will be a marketplace, and I really see a marketplace mainly coming around, perhaps with combat, but we'll see. We may be doing ourselves a huge disservice by not actually having a gold generating loop, but we'll see. We're going to start off with just this excavation, exploration, architecture sort of thing. I do like some sort of tool component, something you would use for that. I like the idea of something that could be used for, because you're going to have at least a couple other folks. Okay. There's a word in Dungeons and Dragons. There's a title. Let's see. It's like like the artificer. Is that it? This here? Let's see. I think Yeah, it's without the let me try that again. Someone who makes art, someone who makes art artifacts. Okay, so we're gonna need some sort of component. So he's gonna craft, right? This is your crafter. This is your crafter. So we're gonna need some craft components, and these things could be different in the same way that IQ has. Um, I know it uses sandstone, and then you use sandstone and marble, but you could also use like sandstone or a tier 2. I really like how in Idle Quest it keeps stone is always relevant. Sandstone is always relevant. You can't do anything at the higher tiers without using every single one of the lower tiers. So unlike in Noroth where you literally move off and you forget about all previous resources when you move up a tier, Idle Quest has you stay. You need the higher tiers, but you also need the lower tier resources as well. So yeah, let's see. You could assign roles like excavator and scholar who deciphers what we found. So you could assign roles who decipher what we found. Yes. No. So that is exactly what I'm planning. That is exactly what I'm thinking. That you would have these three folks. One is your gathering action. The other one here is more of a passive. This is your. I don't want to call him a historian. He's more of a not sociologist. Like an anthropologist. I may have misspelled that. Whoops. So an anthropologist is going to study the civilization itself, study the people and the culture, right? And this is going to feed a little bit more into understanding the city and what's being excavated, so that your gatherer can work faster and better and more accurately. What I think down the line here, maybe after the game jam, if we want, I could see us either having some settings or a specialized class. If you wanted to say, hey, I want you to gather for quantity, or when you gather, I want you to focus on trying to find as many tool components as you can, or I want you to find as many crafting components as you can, right? Or I want you to, forego stone and get more experience. So there's some more of that RPG decision making element that you could do. Like with the anthropologist, it's going to be, hey, I want you to focus on trying to figure out how this city or how this culture did warfare, because what's going to happen, your anthropologist is going to feed your skill tree, and some of those skills will be passive bonuses to your gatherer, but many of these skills are going to feed into combat. Hey, these guys mastered the sword or the shield or whatever, the hand cannon or whatever, right? So both of these craft components, you could also be like more of like a knowledge. I think there's probably some shared stuff here in the idea of things that need to be researched, deciphered, things like that, right? Whereas the anthropologist feeds into your skill tree and the artificer feeds into your crafted materials, right? And if we think about, for example, Idle Quest, your anthropologist in gathering your like knowledge is essentially gathering shards on your gathering tab. And on your gathering tab, you have 5 passive skills, and you get to spend to increase the rate in which you get the gathering charts, but also then what those individual boosts are. Whereas the artificer is your crafting tab. Okay, are we going to focus on alchemy? Are we focused on rune crafting? Are we focused on jewel making? So some overlap there, because let's see, the thing is, what do we do in Idle Quest? Each one of the gathering skills is connected to each one of the crafts, and in this we won't have that clean separation. That's why I really like Idle Quest. The stone, the stone is for rune crafting, the wood is for alchemy, and the metal gathering is for jewelry making, and that's very, very clean and very easy to understand. In this case, we'd be doing sort of double duty. It's going to be stone, and maybe we do have some different types of stone. I'll just put, maybe we have types, maybe we have tiers, but you're able to gather crafting components, and maybe tool component. To be honest, maybe tool component is just something that goes to your artificer, or maybe we reserve that for something that feels a little bit more magical. But your anthropologist and your artificer, and this is where I think stone upgrades could be great, because each one of these people are going to have some sort of you could call it perhaps like a guild hall or something like that, like a crafting headquarters, and you can spend increasing amounts of stone to level up that particular structure, right? In the same way that you can take stone and increase your gathering upgrade level on your gathering tab in Idle Quest. You don't need to. Like, you could leave the anthropologist as like a level 1, and it just works really slowly, right? Idle Quest, you could leave your gathering upgrades as a level 1 and gather very slowly. Or you can sink in 50 levels, 100 levels, and now it's a huge multiplier. But it costs you quite a lot of resources to get there. So in the big grand design, right, of with incremental games, it's sinks and faucets, right? This is this action that we do is our faucet, but the gatherer is a sink, the anthropologist is a sink, the artificer is a sink for stone, right? Oh no, it went over there. There you go. The anthropologist is a faucet for like some knowledge points or skill points or something like that, and the skill tree is the sink for that. Crafting materials comes from the action, and the artificer is the sink for the materials, but the source, the faucet, for tools, right? And tools just need to be upgraded over and over and over. I really like the idea, like in Idle Quest, you never like get rid of a tool. You always just have your hammer, or you always just have your sword, and all you do is upgrade the level. Unlike Elithor or Queslar or Noroth, where you have to craft a new one after new levels. You've outclassed it, and now we're in another tier. So I like the idea here is we'll probably just be leveling up these particular things. I could see us crafting a few different tools, right? So you have, I don't know, if we come up with like 3 different types of lava, or 3 different types, you have your like obsidian, basalt, the pumice stone or whatever, and so you have a different pickaxe or different shovel or different tools for those different things. Each one of those, right? You now have kind of like tool 1, tool 2, tool 3. Well, guess what? Those are 3 different types of sinks for components, right? And so what we want to make sure that we always give the player is a sensation that there's really never a surplus of anything. There's always something to spend your resources on. Queslar does this great. Elithor did it well when it implemented the recycle bot, so you could take all the old drops and translate that into platinum and invest. Essentially, that's like the anthropologist here, and you invest it into your skill trees. Noroth, unfortunately, you accumulate a lot and you just have to vendor it, because at a certain point there's no reason to have so much of this stuff, and whether you're in combat or gathering, you just accumulate way too much, and so at the end of the day you just have to liquidate it all to just gold, and that's not as fun. It would be nice to take those resources and invest it in something, right? Idle Quest does this great. Everything you collect, there's always something next to upgrade. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I do like this drop. We're going to. I do like the idea as well, since we do have this location-based game, that the crafting components or the knowledge components and things like that are going to be maybe location dependent, and this I think is going to be the unique feature in our game as opposed to other ones. I really wanted to feel that the Elithor has it where you have a different drop table depending on what you're fighting, but I want something a little bit more. You're gonna start, there's the land or whatever, right, with the mountain ranges, right? Those are the mountains. It's real exciting, right? And you're gonna pick one of these spots, right? We'll end up have a whole bunch of spots. Maybe they all aren't unlockable right away, right? Maybe like this is your starting location. Once you get to a certain level or something like that, this is like the T0. This is the tier 1. So you always have a choice as to the areas you could go to. You don't have to go to the same one. 2, right? Here's your T2. And once you're at another, maybe you need a certain tool or a skill or something like that, but then you go to your tier 3. And maybe some of this is dependent, right, on maybe not all of what I've put here is achievable. Can I zoom in? I bet I can zoom in. No, whatever. Maybe not all of this is achievable every round. For example, if in our initial round you proceed this way and you find something there, maybe you have to get a certain skill or a certain clue. This is maybe, as you dig, maybe get some we identified tool components, we identified knowledge. There could even be maybe a lore bit, and that would be something that would just be connected to a quest, right, as a drop for progression or something like that. But maybe that unlocks this, or you just go for a certain number of levels or upgrade your tools a certain number of times. And then, so over the course of, say, like season 1, this is what your board looks like. This where the dots at the yellow line here are pointing at, right? And those are the locations that you learn about, and you get the knowledge and stuff like that. And for season 2, I know. Let me get another color here. Here we'll go with purple. Season 2, it's more like this, right? You're up this way, and your map looks completely different. And at this point too, maybe we're only digging one level down. We've only cleared one level at each one of these dots. Because you could also, like in tier 3 here, I'm going to choose a brighter green. Here, let me choose like an orange. Yeah. Maybe in round 3, we go here, and that's it, and we just stay here. But we really dig down. Oops. No, that took us. Oh, did I lose it? Oh no. Got worried there for a second. Maybe we dig down here a little bit different. So we clear off one level here, one level here, one level here, right? One level here, one level here, one level here, one level here, right? We got faster in that second round, because of whatever knowledge we picked up from the first one. So we were able to clear more locations in our second season. Now in our third season, maybe we're coming here and we're really just wanting to, we get to that tier 1. Right now I'm talking about this orange path right there in the middle. So then we get to that green tier 2, and then now instead of proceeding on, we just decide to dig farther down there and better understand that. Because if we go back to what we were talking about, sorry, just a second. If we go back to what we were talking about here, right? Those drops for crafting and knowledge are going to be influenced by how far down we're digging, right? Did you get all the knowledge? Did you get all the knowledge from a particular floor? So here we've got a couple of different things. Did we get all the knowledge? In terms of digging, did we clear the floor completely, right? And then in terms of crafting, right? Did we get enough reagents or components, right? So knowledge is going to influence skills. The reagents or crafting components is going to influence the craft, and then how much stone you can move away is also going to influence the clear. Back in Diablo 1, and I know I'm going 20 years, whatever, more in the past, obviously, or 25 years in the past. And there's definitely Torchlight and many more recent dungeon crawler games, but I'm just going to reference Diablo 1. In Diablo 1, you only had to find, right, because it was just a vertical tower that you just kept going down and down and down and down. And all you needed to find was the staircase down. You didn't need to clear the level. You didn't have to fully explore the map or kill all the mobs in order to proceed further down. You just needed to find the staircase. So you could skip half a level. You could skip a third of a level if you found the staircase. And it was funny because there would be some times where the staircase you came down on, the one for the next floor was like right next to it. So you didn't have to go far at all. You could literally skip an entire floor if you wanted to. I wanted to feel something like that, right? Because the design of Diablo 1 was that at a certain point, it got too difficult for you to be able to survive long enough to find the staircase. And what they had you do is you could restart the game at any point. You would keep your character, everything about your character, and everything in your inventory. You would just start back up at level 1, play through the dungeon again, and this time, all that more experience. So when you got down to that milestone that you were previously stuck on, you would be a more powerful character. This is what people have now come to understand as a prestige system. We had this, 25 years ago in Diablo 1, and even earlier in MUDs and stuff like that. But it was a very very clear, very easy to understand in Diablo. So here I'm thinking, it's not just about finding craftable drops. It's not just about finding knowledge so that your anthropologist can upgrade skills. You need to be able to dig fast enough, because if you don't clear the floor fast enough, you can't go down to the next one, right? If you find enough of X or Y, maybe you can proceed on to the next point. But right, in the same idea that somewhere in Pompeii is going to be a staircase down to the next level of Pompeii, or the city beneath Pompeii, and then the city beneath that. So as your gatherer gets better, he's going to be able to clear more stone away, a greater percentage of the city revealed each action, right? Thus allowing you to get down to the deeper cities in later seasons. So there's lots of stuff. There's always going to be something for you to want to invest in, because once you get down to that new layer, now you have a whole other set of something for the anthropologist and the artificer to be digging into. You've got tier 2 skills or whatever. If we go back to just our little map here for a second, right? Say for example, what's happening here. If we blow this up, right? Right. So this is, we'll just call this like a tier 2 city or whatever. Maybe the spell you find here is we'll just say like fireball, right? And maybe that's the bit of knowledge we find, and we learn the skill fireball, and now that can be added to our spell book, right? And that's what kind of the anthropologists can help with. The other thing we can do is we can start crafting something like like a flaming sword, right? So we start doing so we can have magically imbued, fire imbued items. Okay. So at this point, even if you have fireball is level 1, right? And so is flaming sword. We can craft many of them, we can cast multiple of them, but it's just level 1. If we move on to a different dot in the city, we're going to learn a different spell, a completely different spell. Fire wall, fire shield, if we're in kind of that fire region, right? Flaming sword, flaming dagger, flaming arrows, right? But they're all going to be level 1, right? And this is where I'm trying to get at with why you would want to go down to the city beneath, and then to the city beneath that. Because now we have an even older, the ancestors of the ones that you learned fireball from. Maybe they knew basically your they had like maybe a more primordial understanding of the fire element, or even maybe a more advanced one, right? Depending on if a more advanced society was wiped out or whatever. But for some reason, we're just gonna, for the sake of the game, that dot is where you learn fireball. So if you get down to the second city, now you get Fireball level 2. So as you see on this map here, and I'm just going to talk through the map once more, and then I think I'm going to head to bed here. In Season 1, and each season ends with the volcanoes exploding. In Season 1, we've picked up 1, 2, 3 spells, or craftable items, and we know them as a level 1 item. In Season 2, right? 3 spells. In Season 2, we've picked up 4 spells, right? So maybe over here on this side, maybe that's more of like a ice theme, and over here in the purple, maybe that's more of a healing or buffs, right? So now we have, going into Season 3 here, we have a collection of some ice spells and some healing buffs. But rather than just learn, we could probably make it 1, 2, 3, 4. We could probably make it all the way to the tier 3 along this path, but we won't. What we're going to do is we're going to learn that first one, and then when we get to the second one, we're going to go for more of a mastery there, right? So so in Season 3, we got 1 spell at level 1, and then we got 1 spell, and we took that one to level 3. That was the one that we really wanted. We really wanted to dig in deep there and understand that. So I think the game has a lot of replayability, because you're going to have to revisit some of these areas. You can't get to that, just right out the gate in Season 1. Even Season 2, you're probably not going to be able to get to the second tier of something, because your gather is just not going to be that quick. Your anthropologist is not going to be that skillful. Your artificer is not going to have enough tools. You're going to have to play again and again and again, each time getting more and more. I think the thing you would want to avoid is your Season 2 shouldn't be identical to your Season 1, right? If all you do is go, like if your Season 2 was identical to your Season 1, your anthropologist would be kind of bored. You would still gain stone, you would still gain experience, your gather would still level up, you could still craft things. In fact, right, maybe there was an item here that you didn't get enough components for crafting. So maybe you do have to play through that again. Maybe for, let's see if we found, for example, if that was the flaming sword, maybe, or T3, maybe this is like an ice bow, right? Maybe you would want to play through rather than like go off into a whole nother region and learn more about like healing staffs or something like that. Maybe you're like, no, I want to commit and I want to get the ice bow. I only got 2/3 or maybe half of the components I needed. I want to play through this again and get enough, grind through this. And now when I do my Season 3, now I have an ice bow. I only know about ice magic and ice weapons, right? But I have a much better weapon. So that's a choice a player can make, and that feeds into kind of the roleplay decision making. So I think in terms of the gathering loop here, and in terms of what you can end up crafting, I'm thinking, we have tools. You could have other tools here. You could have, things like, you could have ruins, you could have trinkets, you could have charms, you could have all sorts of different sort of equipment that you craft and then upgrade, right? And it's not that any of this stuff would need to go to waste, right? You could have boots or gloves, right? And then you could have gloves per the different types of stone, so that essentially your gatherer, not only does he have 3 tools, but he could have 3 different sets of gloves. And the more powerful the gloves are, the harder he's able to swing the tool and all sorts of things like that. Um, the anthropologist, some sort of notebooks and stuff like that. The artificer, some sort of crafting tools. And then you could specialize on that particular material. So there's plenty of sinks here that we can think of just looking at this one screen. We haven't even talked about combat, and we could already come up with really we just have one big faucet, but the player gets to decide. Really, the map has like a dozen different faucets, but it's really just, you're only turning on the one faucet at a time. And then there are just a lot of sinks, which is what we want. And you as the player could change it at any time. Oh, I want to go here, or I want to go here. We need to figure out what determines progress from dot to dot. Previously, I thought a certain amount of clearing away rubble, clearing away a path from one dot to another could be part of it. I could also see a certain amount of knowledge, such as knowing the direction or knowing that there was even another location there, so you find some sort of map fragments, etc. So it could be a crafted thing, but I think it'd be a combination of the of the anthropologist and the gatherer. Because if we remember back to yesterday's stream, I also want to keep it that if someone didn't want to craft, if someone just wanted to do kind of the main loop there, they could just gather, and then the anthropologist is really just like a passive skill gainer, just like with gathering shards. And if you wanted to sell all your drops on the marketplace, cool, and that's what you could do. So I still want you to be able to proceed in the game and still be able to sell your drops. So I think your ability to proceed from dot to dot to dot is going to be based off your anthropologist and your gatherer. And one of the things I'm going to say for that is, again, one of the things you can level up about your anthropologist is understanding, he's going to understand how this culture laid out their cities, and not just one city, but the next city and the next city. So the more you invest in him, the sooner he's going to find those lore drops, or the sooner he can translate those lore drops or understand those lore drops, increase the drop rate of the lore drops, because he's going to know more about what he should be looking for to make the progress that you're hoping for. So if you want to speed run, right? If you want to speed run to the tier 3, right? If we look at what's this path right here, if you want to speed run this to get to that T3 as quickly as possible, you want to do the minimal amount of actions on that tier 1 dot and that tier 2 dot. So you want to be able to find the knowledge drops as quickly as possible to move on, and you're going to want to clear away the rubble as quickly as possible. And we can make an argument that knowledge wise, once you know the city is there, even if it's covered by lava again, your map, that doesn't need to be rediscovered. So it's almost like a quest, right? Once you've completed that quest, you don't have to complete it again, but then you do need your gatherer to be able to clear away the road again, and that's going to happen every time the volcano explodes. So the faster he can proceed up there, the better. Okay, I think that is going to conclude. I think that's going to conclude our gathering loop for what we want between now and the start of the game. I think this is just a good starting point. Just have generic placeholder items filter out of the faucet and into these various sinks, and just see how that feels. Put together a basic skill tree, some passive stuff, and some very basic crafting, which I think the crafting will probably be like a phase 2 there, because I really feel like the crafting that I think we're thinking about is really going to be used for combat. And I don't like the idea of having to craft like a sword again and again and again and again. I like the idea of having to craft like one sword and then upgrading it, right? And maybe then there is a cap, something about this, like your artificer level, something to upgrade. So even if you had a ton of crafting components to upgrade, like your fire sword to level 4, if you haven't invested anything in your artificer, he can only make the level 1 one. He doesn't know the technique he doesn't know the technique to make it better. So you're going to want to upgrade your artificer in addition to get the drops, and that's going to essentially be the ceiling for how many upgrades you could do there. And so I think, again, more sinks. So I think, let's see, tomorrow, Tuesday, tomorrow we're going to do a little bit of work. I don't know if I'm going to stream tomorrow or Wednesday, probably Wednesday, but the next stream and video will be about the combat, our version 1 of what is happening here, with these items going over to combat, as well as some of these skills going over to combat. And like we were talking about, the stone essentially being the gas for this. What is the combat loop? Because this is now where we define the multiplayer experience. Up until now, we've not talked about a multiplayer experience. We've not designed a multiplayer experience. People collaboratively working together to accomplish the goal. That's what I want to get out of the next stream. So thank you everyone for watching. The video will be up on YouTube tomorrow, and we begin work on this Thursday. So 48 hours from now we should have code in a GitHub repository. All right, that's exciting. Thank you everyone. Have a good night.